Alright, I am back with another video, and it's been a while since I've done an Illithid Powers build, hasn't it? And one of the concepts I always wanted to explore with that kind of concept was the idea of maybe a paladin who ended up breaking their oath because they had decided to take on the powers of the Illithid tadpole, as if it somehow went against their oath, like they took the easy way to power, or something like that. And I also really wanted to take the opportunity to combine the themes of light and dark together, that being the holy radiance of the paladin with the dark psychic powers of the Illithid, to create a more interesting mix of powers, as well as, now that we have patch 8 out, being able to use a pretty interesting multi-class combination, at least in my opinion, which, when I tested it out, yeah, it's broken. It's absolutely broken. Like, one of the most powerful builds I've made in a hot minute, and it's not even close. So if you like power building, you've come to the right place today. But no, I really wanted to explore the idea of just this Knight of Fallen Valor who succumbed to an easy option in an impossible situation, that being the BG3 main story. Now, it's up to you whether you'd want to run this as a normal character or a Dark Urge. I mean, Dark Urge would mirror some of the themes here, but again, that ties you to Ball. So if you really wanted to roleplay this character out correctly, you might just want to stick with Tav and let your choices be your own. And I don't think this character would be straight up evil either, but I think they would definitely be in the morally grey zone at worst. So really, it's going to be kind of up to you how you would want to play this character in terms of the roleplay and like the actual gameplay approach. But otherwise, the mechanics are actually pretty solid and simple. It's going to involve a lot of strategies that just work well together. And there's a reason that this build is called the Darklight Resonance, mainly because it sounds cool and edgy, but also because it actually does inform quite a lot of what we're going to be doing with this build today. So without further ado, let's get into it. First things up, I've decided to play as a tiefling today just because I haven't built a tiefling in a while and I can make them look fairly edgy. So I've decided to go with that today, but you don't really need it. But I did grab the red ones, the Asmodeus tieflings, in order to grab like a couple of extra spells here and there. We're also going to get access to fire resistance, which is always nice to have, but honestly, any race works for this build. It is a pick your favorite situation. Speaking of those spells that we get, though, we are going to get Produce Flame at level 1, and this is going to use our Charisma, which unfortunately, as you can see over on the right there, is not actually going to be our strongest starting stat. I'll explain why in a bit, but we will have opportunities to use this later in the run. We just have to get a bit creative on how we manage our spell save DC and attack rolls. Now, our starting class today is going to be Paladin, as I have said. However, you are probably going to want to start this build as a wizard, because yes, the multi-class is wizard. You saw the thumbnail, you know what I'm going for here. So we are going to be playing as a wizard to start, and I would say you're probably going to want to play as a wizard for the first 6 levels, before maybe considering a respec, because you know you're going to want to have extra attack on this build at some point, and this build is slightly more wizard focused until you get maybe towards the end. But if you want to start with at least that one level of paladin just to have that sort of be part of your like dialogue tree or whatever, that's up to you. I mean, you can take the 2 levels of paladin first, then go the rest of the way wizard. If you don't mind delaying extra attack and want to play more of a spellcaster to start, that's absolutely fine. Just a single shot spellcaster could also work, or you can start off as a wizard and put in the paladin levels a bit later. It's entirely up to you. In fact, I think though, if you do want to roleplay the paladin aspect, you probably do need to start with paladin. It's going to be a little bit weird on the multi-class thing. You'll kind of have to decide what you want to prioritize, but as long as you get 2 levels of Paladin in there somewhere, you're probably fine. But anyways, yes, we are starting with Paladin, just because if we start with Paladin, even after a respec, we get access to all sorts of armor and weapons, which is great, as well as a better hit point die to start. Otherwise, though, we're not actually going to be wearing armor with this build. We are going to be using mage armor today, so that armor proficiency isn't so bad. And technically, we don't need the weapon proficiency either, but I do think starting with Paladin is a good shout just to get you that better base HP, starting off with 12. We are going to gain access to Lay on Hands as well, giving us a bit of healing, as well as Danger Sense to give us advantage on attack rolls against Celestials, Fiends, and Undead, always good, and of course our Channel Oath as well. Speaking of channeling our oath, we get to choose our subclass. Now, I think you would start this run out as basically any paladin subclass that you wish, from Crown to Vengeance. I just go with Vengeance normally as my default if I don't plan on staying with a paladin subclass very long. Just because it gives us access to, Inquisitor's Might, which in my opinion is just one of the better early level ones. However, we are going to be an Oathbreaker on this build, so in a minute I'm going to have to go do a crime. But I feel like with the way you might play this character, breaking your oath might naturally come up through the playthrough, which I actually think is what I would let happen. Maybe don't try and go out of your way to break it immediately, even though the end goal is to be an Oathbreaker. Let it just come naturally through the decisions you make as you go down a more Illithid-based route, and just see where you end up, because you never know, you might suddenly find yourself on the wrong side of the oath. I've gone for a soldier background here. Again, we're kind of a soldier fighter type, so it just felt like it made sense. This gives us access to athletics and intimidation, and now we can talk about the ability scores. A pretty standard spread here for the most part, with obviously the big change that we've kind of swapped our intelligence and charisma around because we are going to be eventually playing as a wizard. Strength is at 8, we don't need it. Dexterity is at 16, this is what we're going to be using to make the majority of our attacks. Constitution is at 14, again, I would like this to be a little bit higher, and there will be opportunities to bump this up higher later on in the build if you so desire, but otherwise, we don't really need it to be too high. Up to you. Intelligence is at 16, obviously we're going to need this. This is going to be one of our main spellcasting modifiers. Wisdom is at 8, which is always a little bit scary because those wisdom saving throws can be nasty, so make sure you don't get hit by those. And finally, charisma is at 12, because I do want to use our paladin stuff a little bit, and if you play this build, you're more likely than not going to be the face of the party, because you're going to be playing as Tav or the Dark Urge, so really you do need your charisma at least a little bit higher. That plus some skill proficiencies we're going to get is also going to feel pretty good, and we're going to have a way to boost our spell save DC and spell attack rolls, even for our charisma, to the point where having that lower charisma isn't actually going to be too detrimental. As for our skill proficiencies, I already mentioned the ones we get from our background. We can take Persuasion as a Paladin, as well as we can get a bit of Insight as well, or Religion, or Medicine. Honestly, up to you. I kind of like Insight the most for this character. Okay, that's level 1. I'm going to go do a crime real quick. And there you go, crime committed, which means we are now an Oathbreaker Paladin, giving us access to a new level 1 feature, which is Spiteful Suffering. This makes it so we can choose a target that we can see. They have to make a charisma saving throw, and if they fail, the target will take 1d4 necrotic damage each turn, and attack rolls against it will have advantage. This lasts for 3 turns and takes up our channel oath charge. Overall, situational, a nice little buff in some situations, but probably not going to be used all the time, especially since it consumes such a limited resource for us. But hey, advantage on attack rolls for 3 turns is never a bad thing, and the extra damage on top is just a nice bit of extra slicing on the cake, I suppose. So, slicing? Icing. Good lord. So yeah, there you go. That's what we're going to get from being an Oathbreaker. And then we have level 2 of Paladin, where we start to get some of the good stuff. We're going to gain access to our spellcasting, which I'll talk more about in a minute, but mainly, of course, we now have access to Divine Smite. And because of how this build is going to work, we're going to be able to upcast this to the max, giving us some very powerful Divine Smite attacks, allowing us to deal 2d8 radiant damage, scaling up with an extra 1d8 for every spell slot level we spend. And obviously we get to do it on critical hits and reactions as well, so it all works out pretty damn well. We're also going to gain access to a fighting style, and you're going to be taking Dueling, or Defense if you want a bit more AC, but we need to be wearing armor for that, so unless you're wearing light armor with this build, which I am not, you're not really going to get to take advantage of that. So we're going to go with Dueling today. Dueling is going to allow us to, while we only wield one weapon in our one hand, which, let's be honest, is what we're going to be doing with this build, you're going to be able to deal an additional 2 damage with every attack of that weapon, which is just lovely. We're going to be able to make up to 2 attacks in a turn on average, meaning that's an extra 4 damage per turn, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it stacks up pretty quickly on a long form battle. We also have our prepared spells, and I've got a couple that I want to grab. 2 that are really important. The first one is Wrathful Smite. This is an Illithid-based build. I want psychic damage. And here's the thing about Wrathful Smite. It scales up like Divine Smite, adding an extra 1d6 for every spell slot spent. It does cost our bonus action and our concentration, but the concentration is only to maintain the Frighten effect that has nothing to do with the damage, as well as the opponents do have to make a Wisdom saving throw. But again, that is only for the frightened effect, not for the psychic damage they will take. That the only thing the Wisdom save is doing is preventing them from being frightened, so if they fail it, great. If they don't, if they pass, well, I'll be honest, that's not actually much of a big deal. We're mainly just here for a big dollop of psychic damage imbued into our weapon, which is going to feel pretty damn nice to use. So overall, I quite like having Wrathful Smite here regardless, so I think we're going to keep it in, as well as Thunderous Smite, just to give us a Thunder option as well. This one does not upcast, but it also does not require our concentration, and can be an extra source of Thunder damage, which will be important, as you'll see in a bit. It also has the potential to knock the target prone upon a failed strength save, so it has its uses. And then finally, whatever spell you like can kind of fit the final slot, but if you're not really using your concentration to smite with Wrathful Smite or something like that, but actually just throwing up a Shield of Faith to give you a bonus to your armor class, can actually work out pretty nicely. At the end of the day, I think this build can reach a total of 25 AC with Shield of Faith on, so that's actually pretty good. So Shield of Faith as a back pocket option, just to cast and forget, could actually be quite nice. We're not going to be going to Paladin level 3 here, as I really do want to have our levels spent into Wizard more than anything else, so we're going to head over there. At this level as well, we're also going to gain access to Hellish Rebuke, because we are an Asmodeus Tiefling, which is quite nice, so you get an extra little counter-attack there. But also, as a first level wizard, we get to choose our cantrips, and I know you're all going to hate me for this one, but yes, we're going with Booming Blade. Look. Booming Blade first turn, first attack, Divine Smite the second attack. It's just an amazing combo. Plus, I actually kind of need Booming Blade here to be able to build up Arcane Acuity, which is going to help out with all of our spellcasting, which is going to allow me to spread out our stats a little bit more evenly this time. You'll see what I mean as we get into the build, as this build does need a lot of stats to kind of make it the most effective it could be. As such, I do want to make sure that I have a decent chunk of Arcane Acuity being built, and Booming Blade is the best way to do that. So this build is focusing on Psychic damage, Radiant damage, and Thunder damage, as well as a bit of Necrotic damage. We've got 4 damage types we're kind of focusing on to give us a wide array. Speaking of Necrotic damage, I would say you're going to want to pick either Bone Chill or Toll the Dead. I mean, I don't know. I kind of like Toll the Dead, because obviously it has the potential to do more damage, but it is also a saving throw, which I know isn't always the best in the late game, whereas Bone Chill is an attack roll. To be honest, you can take both over the course of the campaign and not really have to worry too much. I think I'll start with Bone Chill for now, but feel free to pick whichever you like. And finally, I'm going to say Friends, a bit of Psychic Manipulation. So we're getting a bit of the Thunder, a bit of the Necrotic from Oathbreaker, because I'm trying to keep the Oathbreaker theme of our Wizard levels here. We're going to get a bit of Necromancy and a bit of Necrotic damage, which is going to be quite fun. And then obviously Friends to manipulate people. Now we get our spells. As aforementioned, you are going to need Mage Armour for this build to give you a bit of extra AC, so make sure you pick that up here. But as for the rest of your spells, though, really, it's kind of up to you what you want to grab. As always, Shield, an amazing pick, as well as Magic Missile. These guys are your bread and butter. Then the rest is kind of up to you. Obviously, we're a Psychic Illithid build. Tasha's Hideous Laughter to inflict mental damage feels pretty good, being able to knock targets prone and keeping them basically out of combat for a while. The rest is kind of up to you. We're going for Thunder damage here, so I can see Thunder Wave being a decent option, as well as something like Charm Person, but we already do have Friends, so I don't think that's going to be overly necessary here. Really, it is a pick your poison type thing. I mean, if you want poison, go for Ray of Sickness, but I also do kind of like Sleep, especially in the early game, so I think I'll go with that. Prepare any 4 spells you so desire. Now at Wizard level 2, I'm not beating around the bush here, you all saw this coming, we're a Bladesinger. I'm sorry, I love this subclass way too much, and combining it with Paladin is something that I've wanted to do, so I'm gonna bloody do it. Sue me. Blade Song is going to give us access to a bunch of things, or Blade Singing I should say, including our Blade Song, which allows you to use a new resource called Blade Song Power to go into your Blade Dance, or Blade Song I guess. I'm going to just say Blade Thing a bunch of different ways. You're going to get Training in War and Song, which will give you proficiency with Light Armor and in the Performance skill, so another way to use our Charisma, and we also gain proficiency with a bunch of different weapons that we technically already have proficiency with, which is why it's okay to start with Wizard in this build if you like, because you're still going to get the basics of what we need. But now, the Blade Song itself. We get to invoke the Blade Song, giving us a +2 bonus to our armor class. This will scale as we level, being a +4 by the time we're done, and it's going to increase our movement speed by 3 meters. You also gain advantage in acrobatics, and a +2, which also scales the same way our AC does, to Constitution saving throws. You're going to unlock the Blade Song Climax, and the ability to accumulate Blade Song charges. I'll go over the Blade Song charges first. So the Blade Song charges basically mean that depending on what you decide to do, you're going to build up 2 different charges, which will affect how your Blade Song Climax works. Basically, attacking with the weapon will grant a Blade Song healing charge, and casting a spell of level 1 or higher will allow you, that is not a weapon attack, that's important, so our smites technically won't affect this, will grant a Blade Song damage charge. So the Blade Song healing charge will give you an additional 1d6 hit points for each charge accumulated, and the Blade Song damage charge will deal an additional 1d6 force damage for every charge when you use the Blade Song Climax, which is right here. So basically, you will just end your Blade Song pretty much immediately as soon as you do this. It's why it's called the Climax. But as such, you will basically regain health and also deal force damage for each charge you've accumulated of both. So as long as you kind of mix and match your spell casting and your weapon attacks, you'll be able to come out of it with a pretty devastating combo that's basically going to make you go straight back up to full health, as well as dealing a massive dollop of damage. It's really fun. And since Bladesong only lasts for 10 turns anyway, you just want to make sure if you're in a long form fight, but you just activate this before Bladesong ends, which I totally remembered to do in the combat footage. Obviously, just make sure you remember to do this. It's just basically a big dollop of free extra damage. It only costs a bonus action, so you can still do all your normal action-based stuff anyway. It's a really fun extra feature that they added with BG3 for Bladesinger, so I highly recommend that you remember it exists, unlike me. As for your spells, you get to pick 2 more for this level, and again, it's a free-for-all. Pick your favourite. Since we're a Bladesinger now, I do like the access to having access to Enhanced Sleep and Longstrider, just to give us a bunch more movement, which is always nice to have. You're also going to choose your Bladesinger's weapon at this point, and I'm going to recommend going with the short sword, because we are going to be using a short sword for this build today. Now, for our prepared spells, pick whatever you like again, really doesn't matter. At Wizard level 3, you're going to gain access to level 2 spells, and of course, the first one we're going to pick up is Crown of Madness. Crown of Madness is obviously our big kind of psychic attack that we can do outside of the Illithid Powers, making our enemy go absolutely mad, causing them to attack the closest creature to them, except us, even if it's an ally, which is really, really cool. And then also we're going to be grabbing a good hold person here, again, kind of our psychic grasp, allowing all of our attacks within 3 meters to be critical hits and making it so the enemy cannot do anything at all as long as they don't pass their wisdom save, which is a ton of fun. Highly recommend this one. Except I just realized we're going to grab that next level because we need something way more important here. Shadowblade. Yeah, Shadowblade is our main weapon for this build. Pretend to act surprised. Shadowblade is a pure psychic damage weapon, dealing 2 to 16 psychic damage. And whenever you use the sword to attack while in dim light or darkness, you make the attack roll with advantage, which is awesome. That actually does work now. They had to fix that in a recent hotfix. The Shadowblade can be unequipped and equipped again, but must remain on the spellcaster's person. No concentration, lasts until your next long rest, and is only a bonus action. And the damage will scale up per spell slot used. I believe the highest spell slot it can scale off of is level 5, which is at least what we want to get to with this build, which we will. So you're going to have a pretty powerful psychic damage weapon there. We'll grab that hold person next level. We also do get a thing from our Asmodeus Tiefling here, that being Darkness, which could be nice. Combines well with Shadowblade, and then finally we do get to prepare an extra spell. I'm going to say we're going to grab Shadowblade, and we're going to annex Sleep for Crown of Madness. At Wizard level 4, we are going to get to choose another cantrip, and at this point I will pick up Toll the Dead, as well as we do get to pick another couple of spells. Obviously we'll grab the Hold Person from earlier, and then your next spell can kind of be whatever you like. We've got most of what I would say I would want here, but I do really like Mirror Image as an extra layer of defense, especially in the early to mid game, so I'd probably pick that up. We're going to get to equip another spell. Let's grab that Hold Person. And then finally, we get to choose our first feat of the build. Nothing too crazy here. Because of my equipment choice, we're already going to have an 18 in Dexterity at this point. So I would say your first ability score improvement is going to go straight into your Intelligence. At Wizard level 5, you're going to gain access to more Bladesong power charges, meaning you can do more Bladesongs per long rest. We're also going to gain access to level 3 spells at this point, and you have a lot of options available to you, but the first one I want to grab is Fear. Fear is going to make it so targets become fearful. They'll drop everything, and then they'll have disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls. The target ends when they're... If the target ends their turn where they can't see you, they can make another saving throw to shake off the fear. So as long as they still have direct line of sight to you, they can't get rid of this, which I think is kind of fun. They have to get away from you first, which honestly just makes sense for an Illithid-powered Oathbreaker Necro Wizard. Speaking of necromancy, Animate Dead. Again, leaning into the Oathbreaker side of things here, we're still going to get an Oathbreaker ability. Technically, I believe this is still earlier than Oathbreaker would normally get it, because I think they normally get this at level 9, so overall this is still pretty good. We're going to get to animate a corpse to fight alongside us, and it's just basically just kind of a fun flavor spell here, but you could get better versions of it later if you so desire. And there's more spells that we'll be grabbing in a bit. Let's have a look at our prepared spells here. I want Fear. Let's grab that. At Wizard level 6, we're finally going to get extra attack from Bladesinger. So really, if you want to optimize this build, you might want to play as Bladesinger up until level 8, and then swap into Paladin, but you could still start with a level or 2 of Paladin, you're just not going to get extra attack until level 8, which is a bit of a delay compared to level 5, but it does work, and I do still like it. Hell, maybe you even play just as a Paladin and then respec into a Wizard later, maybe go to Paladin 5, then start some Wizard levels, and then when you get to 8, respec into this. I don't know, up to you. Feel free to level this build however you like. I'm just giving a general idea of how it all mixes together in the final leveling scheme you want to go for. But yes, we finally get extra attack at this level. We also gain access to a couple more level 3 spells of our choice, and really, it's entirely up to you what you want to grab. Hypnotic Pattern definitely feels like it would make the most sense here, but honestly, this spell is very hit or miss for me. I don't think it is the best option here. I think we'll have better concentration options. So really, I think a proper counter spell will be really good. This will also synergize with some of our Illithid Powers, just completely shut down enemy spellcasters if we need to, as well as being able to pick up another spell of our choice. Haste is an amazing option here as always. So is Slow. I feel like they both work really, really well. So I would probably pick one of those. I think I'll play it safe and go with Haste, but obviously you want to kind of be focusing on concentrating on other stuff if you really want to get the feel of the build, but Haste is your go-to if you just need to get stuff done, in my opinion. And then we get to pick another spell. We'll just leave it as it is. At Wizard level 7, we're going to gain access to level 4 spells now, and we have quite a few more options. I'm going to lean into the Illithid stuff here. I actually grab Avard's Black Tentacles, giving us the ability to summon like literal tentacles on the floor, which can deal bludgeoning damage and potentially smother creatures as well while making the ground difficult terrain. Smothering means that they'll take that bludgeoning damage each turn they are on the surface, and attack rolls against the affected entity will have advantage, while the entity's attack rolls and dexterity saving throws will have disadvantage. So it's just a very debilitating condition that can do passive damage over time, and in my opinion, fits the Illithid theme, because every time I talk about Illithids, I like to go a little bit Eldritch, and I feel like this is about as Eldritch as it gets. We also do get to pick another spell, though, and I actually really like the idea of Odaluk's Resilient Sphere here. I never get to take it in builds, because I never really level up highly in Wizard, so Odaluk's is a nice thing to have, just putting up an impenetrable psychic barrier. You can enclose the target in a sphere of shimmering force, blocking all incoming damage and spell effects. The sphere reduces the target's movement speed by half, and also prevents it from casting spells or dealing damage. Now, if you cast this on an enemy, they have to make a dexterity saving throw to avoid being put into the sphere, but it basically completely takes out an enemy for 3 turns, and they can't really do anything about it as long as you maintain concentration. Otherwise, it's 3 turns of breathing room for you, which you just cast it on yourself and basically become invulnerable for 3 turns. Now, obviously, you can't cast spells or deal damage while you're in this space, but you can still use items. So if you're in a pinch and you want to quickly pop a few healing potions to get yourself back up to full, just cast Odaluk's on yourself and just do that. The enemies can't really do anything about it. Or maybe you need to protect an ally. There's an ally who's low on HP, so you cast Odaluk's on them, and then the cleric in the party casts a bunch of healing spells. There's a lot of strategy that goes with this, and I really think it does fit the whole psychic vibe, so I'm going to be going with it today. We're going to prepare some more spells here. I think I will drop Tasha's at this point and grab these 2. At Wizard level 8, we're going to gain access to 2 more spells of our choice. Again, pick your favourite. Phantasmal Killer fits the build. It's another concentration spell, but it can deal psychic damage, or the last basically deals psychic damage per turn. The enemy cannot move, will have disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls. It's a heavily debilitating spell, which I highly recommend. And then for your next spell, it can be whatever you like. I'm going to lean a bit more into the Oathbreaker side of things with a bit of necrotic damage here and grab Blight. You can choose whatever spell you like here. Let's go with Phantasmal Killer. And then finally, we get to choose another feat for the build. Now, we actually have, if you're keeping the armor choice that I've gone with, you're actually going to have 18 intelligence and 18 dexterity at this point, which is more than enough. So I would actually say at this point, I'm going to take an ability score improvement to bump up our constitution. Not only is this going to help our concentration saving throws, which is really important to this build, it's also going to give us a bit more HP to work with, so I think this is what I'll go with here today. At Wizard level 9, you're going to gain access to another Bladesong charge, which is great. Just gives us a lot of that resource, as well as level 5 spells. And I'll be honest, there are some really obvious choices here. First up, Dominate Person. Literal Mind Control, that's about as Illithid as it gets. We also have Hold Monster, an upgrade to our previous Hold Person. Again, just an overall amazing spell that fits the build perfectly. So I would say we're probably going to equip these. Let's see, what can we drop here? I might drop Mirror Image. There we go. And then our final level of the build is Wizard level 10, which I can't remember if I've ever shown off level 10 of Bladesinger here. Because for a melee build that we are going to be, Song of Defense is a pretty neat feature. Whenever you take damage during your Blade Song, you can expend a spell slot to subtract 5 damage per the spell slot level. So if you were to do it on a level 1, it's 5 damage. If you were to do it on a level 2 spell slot, it would be 10 damage. So overall, it just makes you extremely tanky. And since we're coming out of this with a pool of about 92 hit points, which isn't the highest, this really helps extend your longevity. And because we're going to have such a high AC with this build, thanks to Bladesong giving us, again, a +4 to our AC at base, plus some other equipment that's just going to make us very, very tanky just by having high AC alone. On the off chance that we do take hits, Song of Defense is just going to be there as a backup. So we're actually going to be a highly sustained frontline fighter as well as a spellcaster, which just feels so good. That's why people love Bladesinger. We're going to also grab a cantrip at this level. Honestly, we have everything that I could possibly want from here. Grab Mage Hand for another little bit of psychic shenanigans. We also gain access to 2 more spells here. Of course, we're going to grab Telekinesis. Again, we're a psychic-based Illithid. We kind of have to. It's kind of in our contract. And then, whatever you like for your last one, I always like taking Conjure Elemental. I just love having a summonable minion-type character. We already have our Animate Dead here, but also being able to grab Conjure Elemental as well later on feels pretty good. So, I would say we want to pick that up. As for your final spell, yeah, just prepare whatever spells you like. You have full free reign at this point. Go ham. And that is the build. Overall, what you're going to be getting out of this is a damn strong character. We have up to level 6 spell slots, making us a pure full caster. Thank God that we went to level 2 of Paladin to give us those extra little bits of spell slot power, so that we can actually just cross that threshold into having the maximum level of spell slots. And of course, we are just an absolute juggernaut. We have radiant damage, psychic damage, thunder damage, necrotic damage. We have every damage type we could need. We're going to have the Blade Song as well as our mage armor, giving us a ton of, let me actually just turn around there because the camera got messed up, giving us a ton of AC. I can actually show you here. So it would be +4 here. We're starting off with an 18 in our AC here. So with our Blade Song, we're actually going to have a +4 there, giving us a total of 22, plus Shield of Faith if we decide to put that on, giving us a total of 24. I think I originally had 20 decks in this build, which is why I said 19 earlier, if you guys remember from earlier in the video, but it's actually 18 if you bump up your cons, so my apologies there. But still, 24 AC is damn nice to have. And you can still max out your dexterity if you want to have that higher AC. It's entirely up to you. Of course, we're also going to have access to the Shadow Blade as well, which I did an upcast there, but as you can see, is going to be our main weapon for the build, dealing 2d8 psychic damage, which is going to feel pretty damn nice overall. And yeah, plus Blade Song, we're just going to have a ton of extra damage. AC, we're going to be incredibly tanky, incredibly powerful, incredibly resourceful, being able to completely shut down the battlefield. We're going to have summoned minions, which can help with battlefield control as well. And of course, the Illithid Powers. Let's talk about them briefly before I get into the equipment. So, obviously, as you level up in an Illithid, you kind of do have to take a pretty set path with the Illithid tree, but there are some things that I do want you to focus on throughout your build, but honestly, you're just going to be picking up as much as you can, getting as many Illithid powers as possible. Make sure to grab the Awakened passive from Kresh Yillik as well in Act 1 to be able to use all of these as a bonus action. So first up, Repulsor, just a big blast of energy that's going to push away anything that is near you on a strength save, which has a very high DC as well. Even Steel Watchers weren't passing that save consistently in my testing, so that's pretty good. So 2d6 force damage, pushes things away, knocks them prone, feels pretty good. Mind Blast, just a big psychic blast, spewful, a concentrated wave of psychic energy that could possibly stun a target within. It's an intelligence saving throw, once per long rest, pretty damn good, especially as a bonus action. The ability to fly, once you start to get into the partial Illithid form, when you reach Act 3, obviously amazing to have. You're going to have access to Stage Fright as well, giving your targets disadvantage on attack rolls, and they'll take 2d6 psychic damage every time they miss for 3 turns. The target overcomes their Stage Fright early when they succeed in an attack roll. So basically, because of our super high AC from our Bladesinger, if we activate Stage Fright on a target, they're basically just never going to be able to hit us and just take psychic damage every turn. Like, that's pretty damn awesome. That's a lot of passive damage that's just going to really melt opponents. There's also Concentrated Blast. If we are concentrating on a spell, which, let's be honest, we're going to be doing a lot, even if it's Shield of Faith all the way up to Hold Monster, we can choose to willingly end our concentration by using this ability to deal a big dollop of psychic damage. And if the creature we attack is also concentrating on a spell, we'll actually heal the same amount of damage that we deal, which is kind of nice. But unfortunately, it does end our concentration on a potentially powerful spell, so use this to finish off an opponent, rather than to deal damage early on. We also have some passive Illithid Powers over here. Another one is Psionic Overload, which, I'll be honest, is a real double-edged sword in this build. Your attacks deal an additional 1d4 psychic damage, but you take 1d4 psychic damage every turn. Taking that psychic damage is going to feel pretty bad, especially when we're concentrating on things, because this can end our concentration. I honestly don't think the extra 1d4 is worth it in this case, but this is one of the earliest abilities that you are going to be picking up anyway, so really, you're going to get this either way, so I thought I'd mention it. And also, however, I'll kind of jump around a little bit here. If you're taking that 1d4 psychic damage and you plan to go with the Resonant Stone strategy, which makes you and everyone around you vulnerable to psychic damage, that's 2d4 psychic damage you'd be taking every turn, which is not going to feel good. That's guaranteed damage every turn. We are still a somewhat squishy wizard. I don't recommend it. However, obviously with the Resonant Stone giving vulnerability to everyone around us to psychic damage, you can see how that's going to get pretty stupid pretty quick. More on that in a bit. We also can grab Favorable Beginnings. The first attack roll ability check you make against a target gains a bonus equal to your proficiency bonus. That's always nice. You're going to get that pretty much automatically. Pretty much always want that on. You're also going to have Luck at the Far Realms for a guaranteed crit once per long rest. Absolutely amazing on this build. That is a guaranteed critical hit Paladin Smite. You could do, so basically what you could do is a Booming Blade or a Wrathful Smite to just get a massive amount of extra damage on our base hit. Make it a guaranteed crit, which then adds a Divine Smite on top. That's a nuke. That is just a straight up nuke. That is going to kill most things in one hit. You've also got access to Call of the Weak. When you bring a creature down to 15% health or lower, it dies immediately, and all nearby creatures take extra psychic damage. Very, very fun ability. Charm, meaning that you can prevent subsequent attacks against you. On the first attack, you can use your reaction to cast Charm on someone. If they fail the save, they won't be able to attack you anymore, so they'll have to switch targets, which can just give you a bit more of sustained tank ability if you feel like you're going to get hit, or if you have been hit. Psychic Dominance, whenever an enemy within 18 meters targets you with a spell of a level that is lower or equal to than your proficiency bonus, so at max level, that's going to be most spells you go up against, you can use your reaction to nullify the spell. It's a psychic counterspell, so between this and the actual counterspell that we have, we can shut down enemy spellcasters extremely easily. And then Psionic Backlash. Whenever an enemy within 9 meters casts a spell, you can use your reaction to inflict 1d4 psychic damage to the caster per the spell's level, which can be a lot of extra damage. If we're close enough, they'll take the Steeped in Bliss damage as well, so it's double damage, as well as the fact that if they're trying to cast a concentration spell, they may instantly lose concentration. So between these two Illithid Powers and our counterspell, enemy spellcasters just don't really exist for us. There's also Mind Sanctuary, allowing you to take actions and bonus actions interchangeably to just basically give you 3 turns of absolute freedom on what you want to do with your character. And there's also Free Cast, which I don't have here, but can also be really useful to basically kind of not have to expend too many resources. I would mostly use Free Cast to basically just save one of your level 5 spell slots to upcast Shadowblade. And then still have those 2 level 5 slots for things like Hold Person or Hold Monster even, and such like that. So yeah, overall, the Illithid Powers complement this build extremely well. They synergize amazingly. It really leans into our tanking aspect, and there's even more abilities that I haven't gone over here that could also be used, but I wanted to focus on kind of the main ones that I think fit this build really, really nicely. So yeah, that is pretty much everything in terms of the Illithid Powers. Let's get into the equipment. Let's talk about the Resonant Stone first, since I've already mentioned it. The Resonant Stone is basically an item you can get towards the end of Act 2, which is easy to miss, so make sure you pick it up. Which as long as you have it in your person, you and all nearby creatures are steeped in bliss. Any creature that is near you, and including yourself, will be vulnerable to psychic damage, meaning that all of our Shadowblade damage, Wrathful Smite, all of that will be doubled, which is obviously part of what makes this build stupidly broken. But basically, you will also give yourself and any creature advantage on physical checks and disadvantage on mental saving throws. The advantage on physical checks is a buff. That's quite nice. However, disadvantage on mental saving throws could be a big risk. It's good for us, because then our things like Frightened from Wrathful Smite and such like that are way more likely to go off, but if someone tries to get an effect off on us, we're most likely going to fail it, especially if it is a Wisdom or Charisma saving throw. So I would actually recommend, even though I've actually forgot to put it in the inventory here, that must have been a different save file, whoops, is the Fey Semblance Amulet, which I'll include in the description, which you can pick up in Act 3, which will give you advantage on mental saves, effectively cancelling out the disadvantage, so we're only gaining the benefits here other than us being vulnerable to psychic damage, which in certain situations is still going to be pretty dangerous for us, but otherwise should still work out mostly okay for us in the long run. So yeah. The Resonant Stone, while being optional, it does take this build to the next level of power, so I do recommend it. You do just have to be careful with it, that's all. Watch out for the weaknesses. Now, let's talk about our weapon of choice here, Shadowblade. Shadowblade is an amazing spell, and I'm actually going to upcast it to the 5th level here, like I have recommended that you do, to show you that you will be dealing 4d8 plus 4 plus 2 psychic damage, so plus 6 overall, with advantage on those attack rolls against lightly or heavily obscured targets. It's a light finesse weapon, which means it's going to use our dexterity, and because it is a short sword, it triggers our blade song as such. I can show you here. So we now have our psychic blade song. I'll enter turn-based mode so that we can keep that buff going. There you go, and you can kind of see how we have this glowy psychic sword enveloped in our blade song power, which just feels cool as hell to see. I actually really like the visual here. So yeah, this means we're going to come out of this with about 22 AC and a weapon that deals 4d8 plus 4 plus 6 damage, which is very cool. And obviously, stacking on the Divine Smite power, upcasting that as high as you can to level 4, which is the highest it'll scale to. Yeah, 4d8 plus 6 plus 5d8 radiant damage, with the ability to get a guaranteed crit, thanks to Luck of the Far Realms. Do you see why this is broken yet? It is definitely pretty stupid. Let's move our character just slightly so they turn around. There we go. Sorry, I'm very finicky about the camera. You guys know me by now. I've been doing this for a few years. But yes, with all of that together, you're going to be an absolute powerhouse. You're incredibly tanky. Again, with Shield of Faith, we can take this up to 24 AC, which is just immaculate, and also just have an amazing amount of offensive power. Do note, though, that there are some common enemies in Act 3, for example, that will actually be resistant or immune to psychic damage. Obviously, any Mind Flayers you come across, they're going to be resistant, but any Steel Watchers are completely immune, so you will need to rely on your other damage types to take those guys down, which means that there could be some tricky fights late in the game involving the Steel Watchers, but otherwise they are your main concern. Everything else kind of just dies to this. So let's talk about the rest. First, oh yeah, also booming blade damage. That's a cantrip, and we're still hitting that for potentially 54 damage. That's insane. Thunderous Smite does a lot. Wrathful Smite can do a lot. Oh, it's just, I love it. I love it. I love the damage. Sometimes, even the roleplay guy likes to power build sometimes. Let me be on this one. We broke our oath for a reason, goddammit. Let's talk about the equipment, finally. First up, the Diadem of Arcane Synergy. This is one of 2 options you can pick. Whenever you inflict a condition, you gain Arcane Synergy for 2 rounds. This is the earliest option you can get to give yourself Arcane Synergy, which would allow you to allow weapon attacks to deal additional damage equal to the affected entity's spellcasting ability modifier. So this would be if you want to lean fully into our weapon attacks, dealing extra damage. If you want to get your hands on Arcane Synergy, it will just give you another level of power to work with. However, if you want to guarantee that your save or suck spells are going to go off consistently, swap this out for the Hat of Storm Scion's power, which whenever the wearer deals thunder damage, you will gain Arcane Acuity. Arcane Acuity will allow you to, for every stack of it that you have, give a +1 bonus to your spell attack rolls and spell difficulty class for each remaining turn. And then the duration will be reduced by 2 each time you take damage, which really, with this build, you absolutely shouldn't. So, with Arcane Acuity in play, this will mean all of our wizard spells are going to be way more likely to go off, despite having an 18 in intelligence, and will even allow our Paladin Smite's secondary effects to also go off as well, like Wrathful Smite or Thunderous Smite's Prone. So really, it's just a great overall thing to have. Since we'll be casting Booming Blade pretty much every turn, this is always going to go off. There's no reason not to kind of have this, so really it depends if you want more weapon attack power from the Diadem, which is your early game option anyway, since you can't get this into Act 2. Or if you want more spell safety C, go for the Arcane Acuity. I actually did most of my testing with the Diadem, and I actually found that just throughout the fact that we had the Resonance Stone and a few other things just kind of boosting our, like, debuffing our enemies and boosting our power, I actually found that Arcane Acuity wasn't a huge deal, but I definitely do recommend it for some of the tougher fights in the game, so I would probably say overall, the Storm Scion's power is definitely better. That's probably what I would go with, because let's be honest, our weapon attack power is already high enough as it is. It's probably overkill to go with Arcane Synergy at that point. Or you could use the Ring of Arcane Synergy if you want. That also works. Entirely up to you. Moving on, we have the Cloak of Displacement. This is just here because I like it. It gives us a kind of psychic effect to kind of mess with enemies' perceptions of us, basically giving us the effect of the Blur spell. At the beginning of the wearer's turn, the cloak will activate, granting enemies disadvantage on attack rolls that attack against the wearer. This lasts until we take damage. We're just even more tanky now, because now all attacks against us will pretty much have disadvantage, which is amazing. For the chest piece, we just have the Graceful Cloth here. Pretty standard option. I use this one a lot, but honestly, it's just the best one for this build to make it a bit of an all-rounder. With Mage Armour, obviously, this is going to work pretty well for us. It's going to give us Cat's Grace, giving us advantage on dexterity checks, as well as boosting our dexterity score by 2. Once again, a +1 bonus to dex saves, and increase our jump distance by a little bit, so our Bladesinger gets even more movement. This is just a great early game option that's going to carry you throughout the whole game, and allows you to put those extra points into con to really help yourself out with your stat distribution, giving us a pretty solid stat spread. Moving on to the gloves, we have the Brain Drain gloves. Whenever we deal psychic damage, which is going to be with literally every attack that we deal, we're going to inflict Mental Fatigue. Mental Fatigue will give the affected entity a -1 penalty to Wisdom, Intelligence, and Charisma saving throws for each turn remaining. Once you stack this up 5 times, the enemy will take a bit of psychic damage and will no longer be mentally fatigued. Basically, this is another way to allow our spells to get off pretty easily. We're doing psychic damage literally every turn, so we're either bursting for additional d4 psychic damage, or we're making it so that all of our secondary effects from our spells are even more likely to go off. So, in my opinion, this is just an amazing thing, and because it triggers a condition every time we attack, this synergizes with the Diadem, but obviously we are more likely to use the Hat of Storm Scion's power, but I'm just letting you know that the Diadem will pretty much always be going off if you do decide to go that way, and Mental Fatigue is just a great extra status effect to have, which is why I've decided to include it here. For the boots, there's a ton of options you could go with, Disintegrating Nightwalkers as always, but I wanted that little bit of extra AC, so I have gone with the Evasive Shoes here to give you a +1 bonus to your armor class, and a bit of a bump to our acrobatics as well, which fits in line with Blade's song. For the amulet, obviously, I do think the Fey Semblance Amulet should be your late game option, so make sure you pick that up. Link will be in the description. Otherwise, the Amulet of Misty Step is another amazing thing to grab in the early to mid game, which will just give you a Misty Step every short rest to make you even more mobile. Now, there are a ton of ring choices in this. The one that gives you extra psychic attack power when you are concentrating on a spell. Obviously, the Ring of Arcane Synergy, which I've talked about. There's so many you could go for. But I feel like while we focused on Necrotic, Thunder, and Psychic, we've not focused on the Radiant Paladin side too much, so we're going to be going with the Radiating Orb combo here. First of all, we have the Coruscation Ring. Whenever the wearer deals spell damage while illuminated by a light source, they also inflict Radiating Orb on the target for 2 turns. This works with Booming Blade, so as long as we're standing in a light source or have created a light source for ourselves, as long as we hit with Booming Blade, the target will be inflicted with Radiating Orb. Radiating Orb is going to make us even more tanky, so the affected entity who has Radiating Orb will take a -1 to attack rolls for each remaining turn of Radiating Orb. It also sheds a bright light on any area surrounding it, so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. As soon as one enemy has Radiant Orb, we can just keep inflicting it, because we're then in a light source. The duration will be reduced by 2 each time the entity makes an attack. So you can just kind of quickly stack up a Radiating Orb of multiple attacks and multiple damage riders, at which it will just be stacked up really quickly, giving us even more tankiness and leans into the kind of Radiant Paladin angle, because we're going to be combining this with the Callous Glow Ring. The wearer will deal an additional 2 points of damage against creatures that are illuminated. Now, the ring's description is kind of wrong. That is 2 points of radiant damage against creatures that are illuminated. So as long as we are standing in a light source, which could just be daylight, or we have Radiating Orb up, the Callous Glow Ring is always going to give us an extra 2 points of damage. So plus our dueling style, which we picked up from Paladin, that's an extra 4 points of damage per every attack, which stacks up very, very quickly. That's an extra 8 damage for making 2 attacks in a turn, in addition to everything else that we do. Yeah, just this whole combo works so well. We get to combine so many different themes in a way that feels realistic. Again, being a kind of paladin that fell from grace, becoming an Oathbreaker because they decided to embrace the powers of the Illithid, just it just feels like such a cool and thematic option that's going to lead you down a ton of interesting roleplay opportunities, allowing you to play a character that walks the line between good and evil really, really well. Maybe you lean more into the evil. Maybe you lean more into the good. It's entirely up to you how you want to play this character, and play it you should, because it's a very fun playthrough to do, because you're just going to be so goddamn powerful and also so goddamn flavorful. It is an amazing build. Now, as for the cosmetics, we just have 2 pieces of camp clothing here from Fear Taylor's Camp Clothing, available on console and PC through the modding Nexus. No, not the Nexus, the mod manager. I've just gone for the Cerebral Citadel armor and the Illithid boots to just give us that full, proper Illithid look, which I absolutely love. It just feels like a nice natural endgame point for us to reach with our fashion, because, you know, we've decided to be an Illithid. And of course, you're probably going to go for the Illithid-based endings with this build as well, I would imagine. But yes, that is the build, and I really hope you enjoyed this one, because I just really love the theming, I really love the character design, and I just love what you can do with the build by the end of it. You've got your control spells, your psychic damage, your necrotic damage that leans into the Oathbreaker stuff. You have the ability to raise the dead. You could throw the ring that gives you create undead on this build if you wanted to as well. Like, you've got just so many little options. You've got that little bit of everything that just makes you feel like you can do everything, and it just, oh. This would be a fun character to play, I feel. I feel like it's right down the alley of a lot of people who play this game. And I'll be honest, I know I'm not the first person who's come up with a build like this. I almost guarantee there's a ton of Paladin Bladesinger builds out there. But this one is mine. And I just feel like I really just like the way this one works out. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm not going to keep you too long today. And I will see you all next time. Goodbye.